When you come on board a film like this and it's a franchise that's existed and a brand that's existed, it can be really daunting.
Hey.
I think it's critically important. If you're going to dig deeper, you've got to have somebody who can really do it well, who can do it with a profound ability.
This Wolverine film, I think, takes a comic book character and fleshes it out into real life.
How you doing?
We could really have kind of carte blanche to do whatever we wanted. It had to be just true to the character and true to the story, which stood alone.
I hope you're doing well.
Where we have a chance to redefine who Wolverine is a little bit. I wanted it to feel as real, feel like it's in our world. And at the same time, I wanted the kind of fevered imagination of the comics. I didn't want to lose that.
Visually it's different, in tone it's different, and the goal is to give the best character study of this iconic superhero that has been done.
So since so many of you really loved my Deadpool and Wolverine video, loved it so much that you resubscribed, left a lovely supportive comment, and sent me roses, thanks, I figured, why not do it again? Why not talk some more about Wolverine, specifically the Wolverine, which surprisingly seems to be the almost forgotten Wolverine. I mean, we all talk about Logan, we all talk about the great X-Men movies, the terrible X-Men movies, yet for some reason I barely see people mention James Mangold's first stab at the character, which to me is kind of nuts. I remember being blown away after young me, 14-year-old me I think, went in with little expectation and came out so hyped, so much so that I think I saw it 3 times in the theater. I remember having to beg my dad and my friends to see it with me and them being reluctant to watch because of how tired they were of Wolverine. I mean, I get it, dude, it was released the same summer as Man of Steel, same year as Iron Man 3, Thor 2, the MCU was in full swing while the Fox universe was by no means the talk of the town, even if First Class was a banger and Days of Future Past was only a year away. DOFP, directed by AFMA, ended up being most people's favorite X-Men movie, and the hype of that, followed by the subsequent downfall of the entire Fox universe, made the Wolverine feel like a really handsome middle child lost to age and time. James Mangold, he came in at a point where The Last Stand had sucked the life and love out of the original series, and X-Men Origins Wolverine had leaked on the streets, and all of us 12-year-old boys were watching shady bootleg DVDs of it and loving it. While the general audience was continuing to lose interest. And it seemed like every single superhero was getting a reboot. Superman, Spider-Man, Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy had just ended, but yet Hugh was still Wolverine. This was the same Logan that first started Primal Screamin' 13 years ago at the turn of the century.
That a primal scream is the only satisfying release.
James had the underappreciated, overwhelming task of figuring out what to do with the character that felt fresh, felt different. And you know what he did? Something unheard of, something sadly, shockingly rare. He decided to make a superhero action movie that at its core, through and through, is a deeply thorough, often tragic character study. If Logan is the stripped down, handheld, few location, grounded ending, this is the comic book character study. This is the movie that feels fantastical, not in spite of its depth and truth, but lovingly adds the comic fantasy to the internalized pain. The Wolverine is color, camp, filled with so many panel-like imagery, yet it's entirely dedicated to exploring the psyche of the titular character. I mean, it's in their titles, right? The Wolverine and Logan. One is very much about the hero, the legend, and the impact that has on the man. The other solely about the human. In that sense, they are perfect companion pieces to each other, yet I seldomly hear people sing or rather roar the Wolverine's praises. I don't think we talk about this movie enough, when to me, it's one of the prime examples of a filmmaker getting to put his stamp on the genre without being embarrassed of the fantastical nature of the source material. So sit back, grab some whiskey, a cheap cigar if that's your thing, and let's talk about James Mangold's The Almost Forgotten Wolverine. But before we get into it, I have to confess, these past few years while making my first feature film, I've eaten like a half-burnt alive, half-dead garbage truck. I'm dead serious. I've spent way too much money turning to my DoorDash mistress, wasting dollar after dollar on junk food that doesn't give me any nutrition and doesn't even fill me up. I'm sure you can relate, so maybe it's time to make a change with today's sponsor, HelloFresh. Listen, I'm sure you've heard of HelloFresh. It's America's #1 meal kit. I'm trying to cut some pounds, trying not to feel like a poison Logan on the brink of death, and HelloFresh makes that all too easy with their biggest menu yet. 50 dinner options and even more market items have been added to suit and support any healthy lifestyle. They say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and as a man who's used to drinking piss-tasting energy drinks for breakfast, I can attest to the power of HelloFresh's breakfast. Best part is they are free for life. They are giving all subscribers a free breakfast item with every single delivery. Hell yeah, man, HelloFresh has something for everyone. Each box is fully customizable to fit your preferences, include pre-portioned ingredients, so you only pay for what you need. Plans change, life gets busy, you spend years making a movie and forgetting to take care of yourself. HelloFresh lets you easily customize your delivery from week to week, mix and match lifestyle options to suit your needs like fit and wholesome, family-friendly, quick and easy, vegetarian, and more. Everything is tailored to you. Change your delivery date, skip weeks when you won't be home to cook. If you're like me, wasting so much on groceries that you don't eat and deliveries that are way overpriced, HelloFresh is the perfect solution to keep you healthy and fresh. So do yourself a favor by clicking the link in the description, use my code HiTop AUG10 and get 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. One breakfast item per box while your subscription is active if you're in the US. Outside the US, the local discount will apply. Thanks, guys. Now I'm going to be talking about the extended cut of The Wolverine, which is by all means the truest vision and the better movie. It's the small stuff, extended bits of violence and rage, fun uses of my favorite word,
Fucking window. Fucking wars.
and a few extended emotional sequences. It's not like a full-on hashtag release the Mangold cut, and I'm definitely not saying James was screwed over by the studio. He was not.
The Wolverine is unique, and the qualities and tones of it require a lot of guardians to help shepherd it through and make sure it doesn't get kind of watered down. What you're always looking for with your producers is a team that helps you, guides you, offers great suggestions, and protects you, and kind of protects your vision for the film. And that's exactly what's happened on this movie.
He had a great team of storytellers behind him, supporting him, allowing and wanting him to go as different and as human as possible. And speaking of James Mangold, I think it's time for me to make my formal apology to James Mangold. For those of you who have been with me since the very beginning, when my voice was higher pitched and my alcoholism was just starting, you might remember this video, Why We Hate Logan, where me and my best bud Johnny pretended to get drunk. I mean, I would never drink at age 17, who would do such a thing, and slam Logan for 13 minutes of memes. A lot of people have asked if we truly felt that way or if we were just doing a bit.
I don't care.
The truth was somewhere in the middle. I think at the time, at the ripe age of 17, I went into Logan with the highest of expectations. I was deep into binging film bro brat movies. I was watching Wong Kar in circles, Lynch on loop, and ranting to anyone who would listen about why Eyes Wide Shut was by far the best Kubrick film. And for some reason, I don't know if I was tired, cynical, or just had a tummy ache, Mangold's Logan didn't hit for me like it did for the rest of the world. And you know that feeling when you really don't vibe with something that the rest of the world is screaming at you to love? Yeah, when you're 17, you don't have the insight to realize that none of that shit fucking matters. And all art is subjective. All of it is personal to the individual absorbing it. I never ever rewatched Logan after we made that goofy video, an exaggerated rant meant to be a parody of how most movie review channels work.
I know at least 4 things about movies.
I never rewatched it until about a month ago, right before Deadpool and Wolverine came out. And during my rewatch, Logan worked for me on all the levels that it originally did not. The metaphors felt less like thinly veiled and heavy-handed preachiness and more like a loving dissection of comic book tropes and icons. The emotions hit me way harder. My opinion has almost done a full turnaround. So, I'm sorry, James, seriously. If you happen to be one of the 200 people who watched the original shitpost from a sour-mouthed chuckle cuck who didn't know what making an extended character drama of a beloved comic book character could do to someone's soul, send help. But why am I telling you this? Not you, James, you lovable son of a gun, but you, the viewer. Well, because James Mangold popped his full when making the Wolverine, and we need to talk about that. And it's only right that I address my previous stance on Logan before talking about how much James clearly loves the character. That love is palpable. From the opening frame to the final line, James had the goal to show us a new side of the character, and that starts on the inside through his eyes. Through the eyes of a caged Kuzuri. Before we ever see Logan, we see his perspective, his point of view, and that perspective is the embodiment of the entire film. Peace, tranquility, followed by direct, monstrous violence. It's such a simple yet flawless idea executed flawlessly. It's a statement we are seeing through the eyes of a character we have only really watched from sort of a distance. Logan isn't one to spout his feelings to us. The glimpses into his psyche have been few and far between. Yes, he's had plenty of character moments, plenty of pathos, but we've never really gotten his perspective. We are seeing the summation of his worldview, his trauma, play out right in front of him while he's locked in a cage. We meet Yoshida, and his first action or lack of action is being unable to kill himself alongside his fellow soldiers. He hesitates, unable to take his own life. As we will come to see, Yoshida's deep fear is his own mortality, his own insignificance. The antithesis of Logan, a man who is more than willing, ready to die. He doesn't fear pain nor death, yet he's tired of having to live through it all. Logan shields Yoshida from death, shields a young man from the pain he knows he can live through. That's the summation of the character, right? A man who longs for a peaceful ending, protecting those who desire life.
No pain? You have no...
Oh yeah, pain. Plenty of pain.
A man who, when we meet him, has made a vow to never harm again.
I'm so sorry. I know. I'll never hurt you or anyone ever again. I made a vow.
Of course, Logan's lying to himself, denying himself, because his idea of not hurting also means not helping. Wolverine is one of those great characters because his brand of heroism tends to involve a lot of violence. How many people have to die for him to do the right thing? And he's done trying to find that middle ground. Done trying to love, done trying to live, haunted by memories of love ending in bloodshed. Living like the animal he's always felt like, been told he was, marking his tracks, sleeping in caves. This is the lowest we've ever seen Logan. Even in the film Logan, he had Charles, he had Caliban. Here, he only has himself. Any genre movie, superhero movie that starts with a memory within a dream and follows that up with a dream reflecting a painful loss of a great love is an immediate banger if you ask me. We are 4 minutes in, this is 2013, and this is one of the most visceral, empathetic, and in-your-fucking-face psychological examinations of a superhero. Wolverine saved the cat moment, Logan being unable to save a bear, an animal being forced to suffer from our apathy, the cruel ignorance of mankind, a man being forced to take pity, to grant a creature a peaceful death when that creature was just trying to live.
Don't make me do this.
His first conversation that isn't just a painful memory is him seeking justice, revenge for that bear who was illegally poisoned, drugged up, and forced to be out of control. Logan is seeking justice for himself, the bear, the animal. A metaphor, a reflection of what was done to him, what he was made to feel like, and the innocence that was lost because of that.
Sorry, Gene.
He's living for someone else, living for her, living for a ghost and the professor's guidelines, his guidance. Who is Logan without them, without the X-Men?
I decided to place the film after the kind of demise of the X-Men, the loss of Jean Grey, the loss of the professor. So he's essentially a lost figure, a figure capable of doing anything, but with no mandate, no agenda to do anything at all. A hero without a purpose.
It's such a fascinating way to turn a genuine pile of studio shit into something that has depth and meaning, retroactively making The Last Stand feel more emotional than it ever did. I love they even mention Kayla from X-Men Origins. It's brief, subtle, but Mangold is not disregarding any of the previous films. He's actively making them more emotionally powerful. I love that Famke Janssen's Jean is here to serve as a very brutal and brutally honest piece of Logan's subconscious. She's not a loving dream, more so a horribly sad and bleak tormentor, a twisted romantic fantasy that induces guilt, not love. Logan's self-hatred, his regret personified.
This isn't gonna end well. Everyone you love dies.
And that right there, that is the key, right? Mangold's way into the movie and eventually the emotional core of Logan. Here is this superhero, this immortal being who has been gifted a mutation that allows him to live forever, but is cursed with having to watch everyone he loves grow old, everyone he cares for suffer.
One of the aspects that's most interesting to me about him is his immortality, is the fact that with his healing factor, he can go on and does go on forever. And like gods, experiences the loneliness of a god. The fact that you have to lose those you love and you keep going on. What happens when you fall in love? You live beyond this person, not just by 10 years, not by 20 years, but for eternity. What happens when everything you love keeps fading away and you must keep going? What happens when the cruelty of the world never seems to relent? At a certain point, you start to wonder, do I make any difference?
His response to this conundrum, this great gift and curse he's been given, is to deny himself. Who am I? I'm not an X-Men without Jean, without Charles. I'm not Wolverine, and I never wanted to be a monster. Here's a superhero movie that's basic premise is that the hero, the monster, the man wants to die. It's tragic, it's beautiful, man, and it ain't even the subtext, it's the straight up text.
Eternity can be a curse. It hasn't been easy for you. The losses you have had to suffer. A man can run out of things to live for. I'm not ready to die now, but you are, aren't you?
Yoshida offers Logan the chance at death, and he doesn't take it, even though he clearly wants it. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's fear, but he doesn't deny the reality of a longing for his own end.
You said I was destined to live forever. There's no reason to live.
Was he right?
Yes.
This is a superhero movie about death. Logan's first interaction with Mariko is him saving her from suicide. She tries to jump, end her life to end the pain she knows will come. It's a cycle. This hero wants nothing more than to die, yet stops those who believe they have that same wish from completing the act. Every single character's identity, power, actions, and desires are defined by death. All the major players, the supporting cast, Mariko, Yoshida, Yukio.
All I can see is one part of a person's life. The death.
She watched her parents die from the back seat, as she's destined to do for so many of those she loves. And I love that. I love her. I love Yukio. I honestly wish we saw more of her. I love the alternate ending where she gives Hugh the costume. I love her as Logan's Robin, and I'm sad they never brought her back or mentioned her again. I mean, I understand why, but their dynamic really works. Yukio is constantly haunted, hurting, knowing how and in what way anyone she gets close to will die. And Logan is constantly bringing death, bred, mutated, mutilated to become death, constantly experiencing what should be his end over and over, without being able to actually find peace, yet experiencing all the pain. They are the perfect partners, a perfect pair of tormented souls. As I'm writing this, I'm realizing that supposedly somehow this is also Yukio? Someone please explain this to me in the comments, because what? Point is, the writing, the storytelling is so very in tune with itself. Every action, reaction, plot beat revolves around the discussion, the grand question: what do we live for? How do we keep going? It's why, for the most part, the film feels so in touch with its identity. Logan loses the full potential of his healing factor, and yeah, from a plot point of view, that is a way, the best way, to up the stakes, but that plot point is entirely subservient to his internalized battle of finding a reason to live. As I've said before and will always say, the best fantastical elements, the best grand action adventure plots always come from character rather than a wish list. Rather than a desire to see a certain piece of action, a desire to give the audience what they think they want. In theory, nobody wants to see their hero be broken, be on his last leg. In theory, the test scores will shoot up when our heroes are the biggest of badasses, an unstoppable killing machine. I think that theory is bullshit. We want to see ourselves, our vulnerability reflected in those we look up to. We want to see our power fantasies, but we need to be able to see ourselves. The Wolverine understood that. The Wolverine is entirely focused on its character characters, their internal struggles, and philosophical thematic ideas in a way we rarely see from the genre. We spend 40 minutes before any real action occurs dissecting and witnessing just how sad Logan really is. Always a badass, always there with a bub and an indifferent one-liner, but underneath that bravado is a husk of a human so filled with regret. When the action does begin, it explodes, roars with practicality filled with personality. When he first pulls out his claws and starts murking these Yakuza members, I think perhaps it was the best Wolverine action we've seen from the franchise at that point. Extended cut with added blood or not, this is the first time we've seen how joyless and painful violence is for Logan. He's not invincible here, and every time he gets shot, stabbed, burned, we feel his pain. He's never felt this vulnerable before, physically, but more importantly, emotionally. In a lot of ways, the Wolverine follows the same ideas, philosophies as Logan, a healing factor that isn't working like it used to, a man waiting to die. But like I said earlier, Mangold's film, Logan, made no attempt at feeling like an X movie or a comic book movie, whereas this does. You get the thrilling score, the heightened reality, the camp, yet Mangold still finds the space to fill his film with very tender conversations. Moments that aren't exposition, world-building sequel setup, but are simply powerfully pure showcases of humanity. Logan cuts himself while shaving and doesn't immediately heal. We see him get tired, winded, out of breath, and the film's beauty comes from the fact that he's overjoyed to experience that.
You okay?
Tired.
Do you need something?
No.
He's been living his entire life never fearing death, bloodshed. And now the thing that we all experience, the thing that ties us all together, pain, is reconnecting him to his humanity. Now is as a good time as any to briefly scatterbrainly adamantium bullet through the brain talk about the filmmaking. The cinematography, the camera is so locked into Logan's perspective throughout the entire movie, so very much in his head, sometimes even more than in Mangold's follow-up. I remember maybe not being able to articulate this at the time, but being so captivated by how different so much of the Wolverine felt in comparison to the other films in the franchise. The camera is always so up close and personal to him. It's an extension of Logan. There's seldomly a scene that isn't shot from his point of view. And I love how the use of subtitles accent that. Those of us who don't speak Japanese, like Logan, are not privy to what's being said for so much of the movie. We feel isolated, out of place, we feel like him. I mean, hell, the entire idea of putting him in Japan is not only just fucking cool and different, not only a loving pseudo-adaptation of the Chris Claremont Frank Miller comic, but is the perfect use of setting, right? Logan here is probably the most isolated, the most alone he's ever been. He's always from the wrong time, always different, never truly feeling like he can connect, and the setting of Japan personifies that feeling to an absurd degree. A brilliant choice from the storytelling team was to actively try to avoid populating the supporting cast with huge names. James wanted Hugh to be the only American movie star on board, so it feels like we are discovering this world, this place, this culture, and the people within it as Logan does. We are him and he is us.
We're so used to movies now where they just seem like this pageant of famous people. In this movie, you land in this world and there's not a face you've known before, that you feel like you're completely immersed in something brand new.
That's also why it was so crucial to shoot as much as they possibly could on location in Japan, in the world, instead of entirely on a backlot. People, civilians, humanity consume the frame. They overtake Logan, crowd him. He has to rush through them, be forced to brush shoulders with them, try not to involve them in his violence. It's chaotic and fun, but yet so very alienating for Logan. Somehow, he almost feels more alone, lost, out of place in huge sweeping moments like this than he does waiting to die in the Canadian wilderness, and that's due to the work of the storytellers behind the camera. David Leitch, who went on to direct Deadpool 2, Atomic Blonde, Bullet Train, Fall Guy, co-created, co-directed the original John Wick, served as the film's second unit director, and you can feel his touch, his philosophy about action through each of these scenes, these shots that the second unit team would get. Him and Mangold wanted that chaos, that very raw, almost run-and-gun, handheld style filmmaking, which is a stark, huge, insane contrast to pretty much every single bit of Wolverine action that has come before.
It was old school. I mean, we waited for trains to fly through the background. We ran this sort of guerrilla second unit that helped us capture Japan, which few movies get to do. We had a couple situations where you're running stunt guys through like a real crowd and guys are falling down and people would stop and look and just keep carrying on. Seeing the scope of the city as a backdrop lends huge credibility to the movie and the world.
The architecture of Japan, the set design is entirely different to anything we have seen in any X-Men movie before, in a superhero movie before. It's all so tangible, yet also surreal in a sense. It's based in a reality, but photographed, lit, and designed in a way that feels like a dream.
Jim wanted to create kind of like the stylized, dreamy road trip.
There's a way to do fantasy, but to do it like it's real. That synergy was what we were after. A lot of thought about use of color, unique locations. We wanted to dream big.
And so we really took that cue and went with it and kind of created a semi sort of magical, heightened reality that was also grounded and very, very believable.
And when the team wasn't able to shoot something on location, they built these massive, incredible sets, an entire village, the Yoshida compound, this cold steel tower, even a practical life-size Silver Samurai. You could honestly never tell that this entire sequence was shot on a soundstage because the production design is so in sync with the real locations in Japan. And you probably can't tell that the bullet train fight is shot against green screen backdrops when there's practical wind assaulting the actors, insane stunt work that makes the entire sequence feel like an insane flex for all departments. It's not contrastless gray being used to blend it all together in post. It's colorful, kinetic, full of life. To me, it's still a standout of both visual effects and practical execution coming together to create one of the best action sequences in a superhero movie. This is what we call good planning, not creating something in post, not banking on VFX to fix it all. This is good planning by a great crew following the lead of a director with a strong vision. A vision that everyone not only stood behind, not only encouraged, but wanted to see passionately come to life in the best way possible.
And I think Jim had a really solid vision of what he wanted and a strong point of view. We all sort of followed suit and said, okay, this is the type of Wolverine movie we're gonna make.
He's really an actor's director, and he really puts himself into the moment.
I felt very confident the moment I appeared on set that whatever directions he would give me would be good ones. He's got an amazing amount of energy. He's just full of life and great ideas.
Jim has got more out of me. Jim has pushed me every day. He pushed me to go deeper, more pain, heavier, more berserk, every take. His passion, his drive, his commitment to every take being the best is extraordinary.
And everything in that vision, production design, action, lighting, cinematography, editing, all the stuff that most of us did not notice back then because we were hopefully engrossed in the story, all the stuff hopefully you can feel now, can see now, all of that, all of it is crafted, built to support Logan. I mean, Nagasaki itself, from the first frame through the entire film, is not just a monumental historical setting Mangold is choosing to utilize, but also a pivotal personification of Logan. Nagasaki, a huge source of trauma, bloodshed, violence, where Logan was locked in a cage like an animal, a monster, has grown into a beautiful, calm place of peace. If there's hope that it can be rebuilt, recover from such a tragedy, there's hope for Logan. Maybe he can climb out of that well of despair and see beyond the fiery ash, see that eventually, perhaps a beautiful blue sky will grant him some peace.
My grandfather would say, what happened here was proof that everything in the world finds peace. Eventually.
People say the Wolverine falls apart in the third act, and in a sense, yeah, that final CG action piece with a giant CG villain kind of feels so tonally at odds with the nature of the rest of the film. Same goes for Not Poison Ivy. I actually love this actress and love how campy and comic booky Mangold chooses to portray that character.
Tell you what, you twisted mutant bitch.
But yeah, man, tonally it's a little bit at odds with the rest of the movie, but those things never really bothered me, took me out as much as it seemingly did for so many critics and fans alike. And thematically it all still works, right? The Silver Samurai, Yoshida as a villain, is the perfect antagonist. He's a man-made mockery of the man he idealized as a mythical monster. What Logan thought was kindness, tenderness, was actually obsession, fear, desire. You have a villain that spent millions who betrayed the love of his family, all to escape the very thing that the hero wishes for.
Your mistake was to believe that a life without end can have no meaning. It is the only life that can.
Perhaps the problem why the end feels kind of off is due to the fact that the resolution of Logan's arc, his death wish, happens when there's still 30 minutes left in the movie. When Logan's on the table, reaching to get the bug out of his chest, gripping his own heart, his own mortality. He dies as Yukio envisioned, but is reborn with a new sense of purpose. He's accepted that while, yes, he is a monster mutated by man, he can use that monster to help save others from the death he has always and will always, in many ways, long for.
What kind of monster are you? The Wolverine.
The great journey of this movie is Wolverine finally realizing that that reason to be and that reason for who he is exists within himself, not outside. It's, in the end, the true power of life is accepting who you are and making the most of that.
And I love that it's not a complete growth for the character. His struggle is not wrapped up with a perfect little bow on top. Logan Wolverine will always be a tragic character filled with doubts, regrets, defined by death. I love that in Logan, he seemingly regressed back to his emotional state at the start of this film. I love that he, much like us, has his moments of peace, his moments of purpose, his desire to help and protect others, yet very much like each and every one of us will always be faced with his internal and eternal sadness, a selfish, destructive feeling of isolation. He's at his best when he has someone to protect, someone to care for, to believe in, since he cannot believe in himself. And he's at his lowest when left alone with his centuries of hurt.
Can you stay?
I can't.
Yes, you can. This is what you wanted.
Not anymore.
Any filmmaker, especially at that time, who can come into a franchise a character that might have very well been on his last legs, that was being phased out by huge spectacle comedies, deserves the utmost appreciation for trying to tell a real story about a cursed, tormented man who has lost all hope within the confines of a genre crowd pleaser. James did something different, something that very well should be the norm. He asked himself, why? Why make a Wolverine movie? What story is there to tell? How can I make this personal, profound, and true to the nature of why we love these gods?
For me, it's going to have my name on it forever. And so much more important than any of that is that it be good. In a world in which so many of these big movies kind of feel hollow, I think what Hugh and I as friends set out to do is to try and make a movie that's actually about something. Questions about life and right and wrong, love, redemption, why is life worth living? And those questions can be asked inside movies like this, completely different kind of comic book film built on character.
Logan's journey in the Wolverine is not necessarily about curing his angst, his grief, his desire to die. Rather, it's about coming to terms with all the pain he's faced, the loss he's suffered, and trying to find the why within it all. Maybe he was born from rage, shaped by pain, and he'll never be able to change that. Maybe the why, maybe his power, is within his perseverance through the pain. His immortality is his ability to keep caring when his experience with humanity gives him every reason not to. Where do we go? What do we do? How do we keep going? I guess We'll just have to see.
So, where do you want to go?
Let's just start with up.
And then?
We'll see.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Huge announcements coming soon about Jason. It's coming out very, 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 very soon. Unless I die, that would suck, but you know, hi. Anyways, I'm trying to plug the Patreon page more. I'm starting to actually post stuff on there for once, which is very, very cool. And thank you to everyone who supported on Patreon for so long when I'm not posting stuff. I could do behind the scenes, I could do video scripts, movie scripts, whatever you guys want. Weekly live streams, I don't know. It could be, you know, above the belt or below the belt. No, I'm kidding. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the video, and have a lovely, lovely, lovely day.